Well, it's a fast-moving time, isn't it? Can you believe it was just this week that we saw Donald Trump return to the White House, the inauguration? We didn't know if there were going to be tariffs directed at Canada on day one. Trump did not impose tariffs as previously threatened, but he did suggest we could see them as early as February 1st. Our next guest argues tariff threats are potentially a negotiating tool aimed at forcing tighter U.S.-Canada integration, but it is certainly a storyline ultimately that's getting a lot of attention in currency markets. And Thierry Wizman has been tracking them for years as a global FX and rate strategist at Macquarie. Thierry, thanks very much for being with us. I guess starting with the fact that we did see that worry in the markets about tariffs coming as soon as Inauguration Day, and then that sort of narrative being pushed out to February 1st. How would you describe the week that was in the markets themselves?
Well, it's really been a week of confusion because, unfortunately, I think everyone would like to have a coherent, plain message about tariffs from the new administration, whether it's pro-tariff or anti-tariff. Unfortunately, that's not what we're hearing. We're at some points we hear the tariffs are coming and they're coming around the corner. On other occasions, we hear that they are only being studied and or not around the corner. Sometimes we hear that they're delayed, at least relative to the concerns about the day one imposition of tariffs. So we're not hearing a coherent message. And I think to some extent, not hearing a coherent message might be part of the strategy here, right? Uncertainty is a feature of Trump's approach. It is not a bug in Trump's approach. And of course, uncertainty has its own effects too, to the extent that no one knows what's going to happen. It could depress, decisions on the part of businesses and households. It could have a depressing effect on the economy, even if no tariffs are ever imposed. But just the uncertainty has that effect. And that could be a way of pressuring other countries into concessions as well. So we don't really know what's happening, but we suspect that I think the main point being here that, as you said, tariffs are not really the goal. Tariffs are the means or the way, and they are intended to extract ultimately concessions with the threat of tariffs, to extract concessions from the U.S.'s trading partners on a whole host of issues, national security issues, border issues, issues pertaining to China. Mm-hmm. And I think this is the purpose here of the threats, if not the threat of the tariffs, if not the threat of tariffs.
And how much of that uncertainty are you seeing reflected in the currency itself? I mean, we have the Canadian dollar basically bouncing around levels we last saw in the early days of the COVID pandemic. To a certain extent, it feels like now, based on what you're saying, people are just trying to figure out where we go from here, politically speaking, before they make any rash decisions. But no doubt we have seen plenty of weakness for our loonie, and I think a lot of people are curious about what comes next.
Well, certainly until about 3 weeks ago, there was plenty of weakness for the loonie. But as you might have noticed in the past 3 weeks, we've been a fairly tight range around the 143, 144 area for dollar CAD. That might be a reflection, as you mentioned, and suggest that no one's willing to take a rash directional view here without knowing not just what President Trump wants to do with tariffs, but also what the Canadians want to do with respect to their own government. And I would submit that those two things are quite interrelated. It may very well be the case that even if President Trump puts tariffs on Canada, say on February 1st or in the weeks thereafter, he may be perfectly willing to remove those tariffs if Canada elects and installs a conservative-led government in the parliament. I think if that were the case, not only would Trump see eye to eye with this government, but I think that government would be prepared to make the concessions to the United States that Trump wants to see, in which case you don't really need the tariffs, and certainly not the threat of tariffs anymore. So we treat these as two subjects, but they could conceivably be viewed as one subject.
Well, you're right. It's all, it feels like in the same bowl of soup right now. We're actually going to be having a conversation with the Premier of Alberta, who has been stressing the more diplomatic approach to this uncertainty rather than getting ready for dramatically retaliatory tariffs aimed at the United States. If you had to guess what kind of approach Canada takes would be best received in the market, just out of curiosity, in terms of Canada's response to this tariff threat, what would you say?
Well, it really depends, again, on what the U.S. is going to ask of Canada. I think that the clearest ask so far has been in regard to the border, border security, drug interdiction. Maybe it might be the case that those are the only asks, in which case it will be easy to find a diplomatic solution that satisfies the United States and President Trump. If the demands broaden from there, and I'm not sure that they will, they may be as simple as what we've just heard, then I think there's a clear path to a solution without tariffs and certainly without retaliation. And then we could see the loonie appreciate quite a bit once this uncertainty is lifted and resolved.
Okay. Terry, it's always great to get your perspective. Thanks very much for sharing your insights. Terry Wizman, Global